boarding pass struck her chest with a sharp thud, the dry slap echoing through a first-class cabin frozen in silence. In that instant, every sound aboard Aerovista Airlines Flight 1281 seemed to stop. The roll of suitcases, the thump of handbags, even the rhythm of breath was smothered under the thick air of prejudice. Do you think this is a welfare line? First class is for people who can actually afford it. Understand, the voice of Brittany Cole. 31 lead flight attendant, sliced through the air like a knife. Tall, poised with the cold eyes of someone drunk on small but absolute power, the power to decide who belonged. The woman in seat 2 lifted her head slightly. No reaction. No anger, only the stillness of a lake in a storm. Dr. Maya Robinson, 42 years old, wore a simple ash-grey suit, no flashy jewellery. Her hair was neatly tied at the back, her deep eyes calm. She spoke slowly, every word clear, her southern voice low and steady. "I have a first-class ticket." Brittany sneered and yanked the ticket from her hand, as though confiscating evidence of a crime. The cabin light glinted off the Aerovista logo as she examined the paper under her phone's flashlight, then deliberately slapped it hard back at Maya. "Take it, Mom. Next time, don't dream of sneaking up here again." In seat 1, C businessman David Boston looked up from his laptop. His phone camera was already recording half the scene, framed, ready to catch a scandal. In 1D, Margaret Thompson, 67, whispered to her husband, "They do this all the time. Fake tickets just to sit where they don't belong." Her husband nodded, as if agreeing with a truth universally known. The cabin was silent. The only glint of light came from the silver Patek Philippe on Maya's wrist, a small gleam that, to those who understood, spoke of real status. You know, Brittany went on her tone thick with arrogance. People like you should know your place. She switched on her live stream. "Hey guys, looks like we've got another fake first-class case today. The number of viewers climbed from 23 to 47 to 89. Comments poured in laughter and mockery, filling the chat. Maya said nothing. She opened her iPad and continued reading as though none of it touched her. But inside her chest ached not from shame, but from exhaustion. Exhaustion from a world that still demanded proof she belonged even when she had paid for the right to sit there with her own work and intellect. In seat 3, B. Maria Santos, a young Latina woman, tightened her seatbelt. She recognized that look, the look of someone humiliated, yet holding it together. But Maria stayed silent. She had spoken up before, and it had cost her a job. Security on the way, Brittany spoke into her headset. "We've got a passenger refusing to move." The reply came, "They're coming." 3 minutes later, 2 men in dark blue uniforms appeared. Officer Luis Alvarez, 38, led the way. He glanced at Maya without truly seeing her. "What's going on here?" "She's in the wrong seat and won't move," Brittany answered, her eyes triumphant, as if vindicated. Luis nodded, turned to Maya. "Ma'am, please gather your things. This isn't your seat." A flicker of light passed through Maya's eyes, not anger, but warning. Calmly, she picked up her phone, opened her contacts, and sent 3 short messages. Assistant, legal team, board chair, personal. David Boston kept recording, whispering to his audience. This is the kind of passenger that disrupts flights, always thinking they're entitled. The hashtag #FirstClassFraud popped up and began to spread. Maya placed her phone back on the tray table and met Luis's gaze. "I said I have a first-class ticket, and I will sit in the seat I paid for." Her voice was low, steady, unshaken without apology. Luis frowned. He had faced resistance before, but never like this, so composed, so certain. Under the cabin lights, Maya's face carried the authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms, not someone cowed by authority. Brittany laughed again, addressing her followers. "You heard her, folks. Says she's got a board meeting, maybe at the board of McDonald's." Laughter filled her headset as emojis flooded her screen. Maria looked down, avoiding eyes. David kept filming. Margaret whispered again. Everyone wants to play the victim these days. The words fell into the silence like cold needles. Outside the aircraft door, the Texas afternoon sun spilled in, painting the cabin gold. In that light, Maya's face looked serene, almost detached. In her mind, one thought repeated, "They have no idea who this seat belongs to. 10 minutes until takeoff." Luis leaned closer, his voice low. "Mom, please step out. We don't want to make a scene." And I, Maya, replied, "Want things done right." Every word, precise, deliberate, cutting through the air. No one in first class knew that the woman they were looking down on was not just a passenger, but the person who held the fate of the entire airline in her hands. At the front of the cabin, Brittany tilted her head, her smug smile still lingering, unaware that in a few minutes that very smile would set the internet ablaze. The overhead speaker crackled. "Security to gate 12A." Maya closed her eyes. Her hand rested on her Hermes Birkin bag, the same bag Brittany assumed was fake. Inside there was no fear, only the calm certainty of someone who knew her worth, and that sometimes, to teach the world a lesson, silence is the most powerful weapon, at least until every light turns your way. In row 4, see a middle-aged black man stood up. "Excuse me, but she does have a boarding pass." "I saw it." "Sit down," Sir Luis said quickly. "We'll handle this." No one noticed Maya's faint smile, not of mockery, but of foresight, the smile of someone who already knew how the game would end. Because when you are pushed to the lowest point, your rise becomes the loudest sound of all. The cabin door was still open, but the battle for power had already begun. And in seat 2, a Dr. Maya Robinson was ready. Heavy footsteps echoed along the jet bridge, each one closer than the last. 2 figures in blue uniforms appeared at the cabin door, Officer Luis Alvarez in front, a younger colleague behind him, face stiff and uncertain. "Security here. What's going on?" "She's sitting in the wrong seat and refuses to move." Brittany Cole answered quickly, her tone confident, as if coordinating a criminal incident. She didn't realize that every word was being streamed live to hundreds of viewers. The phone perched on the food cart displayed the count clearly: 326 viewers, 94 comments. Messages flooded the screen. "Kick her out already. Who wears a cheap grey suit and dares to sit in first class?" "Do it." Brittany Luis frowned. "Are you live streaming this?" Brittany flinched, then forced a laugh. "Oh, just documenting the situation. New policy, right? No." "It's not," he said shortly, but continued with his duty. Every gaze in the cabin turned toward Dr. Maya Robinson. She sat perfectly still, back straight hands, folded neatly on her lap, her calm eyes, unsettlingly steady. Luis gestured. "Ma'am, please, stand up." Maya lifted her head, her eyes meeting his deep, not defiant. "I understand you're just doing your job, but so am I by staying exactly where I belong." For a moment, Luis sensed something was off, but Brittany interrupted sharply. "You don't need to argue with her. I've already called the cabin manager. He's on his way." Luis nodded slightly and stepped back. From the rear of the cabin, Paul Hendricks, the cabin manager, appeared uniform, crisp eyes, sharp and cold, the look of a man used to solving problems, not hearing truth. What's happening here? She sat in seat 2A and lied about having a first-class ticket. Paul turned to Maya. "Documents, please." Maya handed over her ticket and ID without hesitation. Paul skimmed through them, frowning. The ticket was real. The name matched the fare, $2,847. Yet he still didn't believe it. "We've seen sophisticated forgeries before. I'll need to verify further." Maya simply nodded. "Take your time." She didn't argue, didn't smirk, didn't act offended. That composure infuriated Brittany. She's good at pretending to be calm. Let's see how long that lasts. In seat 3, B. Maria Santos clutched her phone and discreetly started recording, not live streaming, just filming. A knot of unease tightened in her chest. Something about all this felt deeply wrong. Paul called passenger data services. "I need a check on the name. Robinson, no Maya Robinson." "Ticket class seat 2A. "Quick," the voice from the ground replied. "Yes, the name's on the list." "Gold status." Paul hesitated for half a second, then recovered. "Could be a system error. Happens with ticket transfers. Mr. Hendricks." Lewis interjected quietly. "It looks legitimate. Maybe we don't need to." "Enough, officer." "I'm the authority on this flight," Paul snapped. From seat 1C, David Boston kept recording, whispering clearly into his mic, a textbook case of reverse privilege, pretending to be elite for special treatment. He didn't know that in just minutes the clip would spread across every aviation forum online. "I bet her ID's fake," Brittany muttered. Louise looked at her. "You have proof intuition. Intuition isn't procedure." Then what is letting her keep seat 2A? The air grew thick. Every breath in the cabin carried tension, resentment, or doubt. Maya took out her phone and typed 3 brief messages. Delay confirmed. Legal ready. Inform chair. She set it down calmly. Under every stare, she looked unnervingly composed. For a fleeting moment, Louise thought this woman isn't ordinary. Paul turned to her. "Mum, we're already behind schedule. If you won't disembark, we'll have to involve the captain. Then call him Maya," replied, her voice soft but steely. Brittany laughed. "You think the captain has time for you? Hundreds of passengers are waiting, and you want to play the victim." On her phone screen, the comments exploded again. "Kick her out already. Why is she still there? Best drama ever. Viewer count 412. Maria leaned towards the man in seat 4C, whispering, "You see, she's done nothing wrong." The man nodded. "I know. But speaking up won't change anything." Louise exhaled, glancing at Paul. "We should handle this carefully." "Carefully, I've been doing this for 20 years. I can tell who really has money." He didn't notice the phones raised around him, recording his every word. David Boston panned his camera, catching Paul's and Brittany's faces in full frame. Maria saw it, her heart racing with both fear and relief. Fear of retaliation, relief that evidence was being captured. The air in first class felt hot, suffocating. The hum of the air conditioner could not ease the heaviness. Brittany checked her watch, impatient. 6 minutes till door close. Handle it. Paul turned to Louise. "Prepare to escort." "Wait," Maya said, her voice low and even. "I request that the captain verify this himself before anyone makes a mistake." Brittany scoffed. "Who do you think you are to demand the captain?" No one answered, but Maya knew in a few minutes that question would silence them all. The cockpit door opened. Captain Alan Mercer emerged, tall silver hair, his tone calm but commanding. "Why haven't we closed the door?" "Passenger in the wrong seat, refusing to move," Paul said quickly. "Let me see the ticket." Maya stood handing him the crumpled boarding pass that had been thrown at her earlier. The captain glanced at it, then looked directly at her. "Dr. Maya Robinson, yes." He nodded slightly. The name sparked something in his memory. Something from a finance meeting months ago when the airline discussed leasing new aircraft. He turned to Paul. "Do we really have a problem here?" "Yes, sir. The ticket looks real, but I suspect you suspect what high-level forgery, sir." The captain's gaze shifted from Paul to Brittany, then to Louise, and finally back to Maya. The atmosphere changed. "Give me 2 minutes." No one moves. He stepped back into the cockpit, closing the door behind him. A strange silence fell. Brittany leaned toward Paul, whispering, "What's he doing?" Paul frowned. "No idea. But if she's got connections, we're in trouble." Brittany smirked. Connections. That woman in a grey suit with a fake bag. The cockpit door opened again. The captain stepped out, his expression different now, thoughtful. He looked at Maya once more, his eyes sharp with realization. "We're delaying departure. I need to confirm something." His words hit like thunder in the quiet cabin. Brittany's face went pale. Paul stood frozen. Louise took a step back. In that moment, Maya lowered her gaze, slightly, picking up a black leather business card holder. Her fingers brushed the smooth surface, the cabin light, catching the fine gold letters engraved upon it, Robinson Air Release, CEO and founder. She didn't have to say a word. The captain already understood that the woman they had humiliated might very well own the plane they were standing in. And from that moment on, the real storm had only just begun. The cabin speaker crackled to life, the captain's voice calm but weighted. "Ladies and gentlemen, our departure will be delayed for a few minutes while we verify a situation in the first-class cabin. Thank you for your patience." The cockpit door closed. No one spoke, but everyone sensed something had shifted. The way Captain Alan Mercer looked at the woman in seat 2A was not the look of suspicion, it was the look of recognition. In seat 1, C. David Boston gripped his phone camera, still rolling. He whispered to his live stream audience. The captain just paused the flight for a single passenger. Maybe she knows someone high up at the airline. The drama is about to peak. In the corner of the cabin, Brittany Cole stood ramrod straight, face cold, yet her hands had begun to tremble. The viewer count on her phone kept rising, now more than 600, and the comments had started to split. Let her prove it. Her poise doesn't look like a liar's. Maybe she really is important. Brittany caught that last line, her heart tightening, but she lifted her chin and told herself, impossible. Someone like that could not have real power. Dr. Maya Robinson remained still. Her hand rested on a black leather card holder, the business card lying face down, like an ace waiting for the exact moment to be played. She looked around quietly, reading every face, the curiosity, the doubt, the awkward sympathy, and she felt it plainly. Each person was pricing her by the color of her skin and the simplicity of her grey suit. The cockpit door opened again. Captain Mercer stepped out with Paul Hendricks behind him. He set a hand on the back of seat 2. His voice now changed, "Ms. Robinson. May I see your ticket and ID once more?" Maya passed them over gently. There was no tension in the gesture, only the steadiness of someone who already knew she would prevail. Mercer checked carefully. Name, flight code, fare, everything matched. He looked straight at Paul. "You said she is in the wrong seat." "Yes, sir. I suspect fraud." Mercer nodded slowly, his eyes hardening. "You suspect, but you did not verify." Paul swallowed and had no answer. The cabin was silent. "Maria Santos in row 3. Bea watched, heart pounding. 2 years earlier, a passenger had called her help simply because she wore a trainee's uniform. She said nothing now, but bitterness and vindication rose together in her chest. Captain Brittany cut in, trying to recover control. "I believe there's been a mix-up." But Mercer turned to her voice, low and final. "Be quiet for 1 minute." For the first time, Brittany did not argue. Maya slowly turned the business card over on her tray table and set it down, the lettering facing up. No one could look away. Sunlight from the window caught the gold embossing Robinson Aerolise, Dr. Maya Robinson, Chief Executive Officer and Founder. The space burst into absolute silence. Brittany went numb. Paul stood rooted to the floor. Louise, the only one still composed, stepped back slightly and looked to Captain Mercer for orders. "You are the CEO of Robinson Aerolise?" Paul asked, his voice raw. "Yes," Maya answered softly. "And per the contract file, this aircraft," she tapped the table lightly, "is currently on Aero Vista Airlines' lease roster at $2.3 million per year for 7 years. No one breathed. Maria blurted without thinking, "Oh my God, David!" Boston zoomed tight on the card, his voice shaking. "Did you hear that, everyone? She is the CEO of the company that owns this plane." A chill ran through Brittany's body. She tried to speak, but her lips made no sound. The live stream kept rolling, capturing every expression. The stunned eyes, the paling faces, and at the center, a woman as calm as if the storm had always been part of her plan. Maya unlocked her phone with a simple motion, opened her fleet management app. The screen showed a list of 67 aircraft on lease, including N847RA, the identifier of the plane she was seated on. She angled the phone toward Captain Mercer. "Do you see this one? And I can have headquarters confirm immediately." Mercer looked, then drew a long breath. He knew he stood between two fires, the airline's bureaucracy on one side, the woman holding a stake in an entire sector on the other. He lifted his handset. "Ground control, this is Captain Mercer. I need to verify passenger Dr. Maya Robinson, CEO of Robinson Aerolise. Please connect me with corporate contracts." The ground agent's voice came back after a few suffocating minutes. "Confirmed. Dr. Robinson is the CEO and chair. Lease contract number R. A2387 is active." "Is there an issue?" Captain Mercer replied quietly. "No, just a small misunderstanding." When he clipped the radio back, Brittany looked hollowed out. Maria glanced at her and murmured, "Sometimes quiet power is scarier than a shout." Maya smiled faintly. No one needs to shout when the truth is loud enough. David Boston was still talking to his viewers, but his tone had changed. The scorn was gone, replaced by awe and regret. "I can't believe it, Aunt. The woman they were about to drag off is the one leasing the entire plane." Brittany stepped back, lips trembling. "I didn't know, You were just doing your job." Maya cut in, neither angry nor amused. "Is your job to humiliate people?" The question fell like a cold blade. No one could answer. Louise spoke, breaking the stillness. "Mom, I apologize for not checking more thoroughly." Maya dipped her head. "You fulfilled your role, officer. The failure lies in a system that trains people to decide who deserves respect." She turned to Captain Mercer, voice steady. "I trust you understand now why I asked to see the captain." "Yes," Mercer said softly. "I understand, Ma'am." She stood slowly and faced the first-class cabin, all those who had looked at her with doubt. "I did not come to prove I am wealthy or to take revenge on anyone. I want everyone to remember this. Sometimes the person you look down on is the one holding the door to the road you walk. No one spoke, but their eyes had changed. In seat 3, B. Maria quietly stopped recording tears slipping free. In 1, D. Margaret lowered her gaze, shame heavy on her shoulders, and Brittany still stood there, clutching her phone, while the stream had ended on its own. A red line glowed on the screen, stream ended by host policy violation. At the center of the cabin, Dr. Maya Robinson returned to her seat, buckled her belt. She did not need another word. From the moment that card caught the light, the small world inside this first-class cabin had been changed forever. Outside the window, the Texas afternoon sun tilted, washing the Aero Vista lettering in bright gold. No one guessed that in only a few more minutes, this incident would sweep across every platform, trigger a media earthquake, and force the airline itself to bow and relearn 2 simple words: human dignity. The air in the cabin felt frozen. Everyone's eyes remained fixed on the woman in seat 2. The one who had just turned from the suspected passenger into the figure shaking an entire system. Captain Alan Mercer could feel the pulse pounding at his temple. 30 years in aviation had taught him how to stay calm through storms, engine failures, and panicked passengers, yet nothing had ever made his hands tremble like this moment. He knew the name, Robinson Airlines. In the aviation world, it meant financial power contracts worth hundreds of millions. And now the woman who led it, the chairwoman, the CEO, the owner of the very plane he was commanding, was sitting just a few meters away after being publicly humiliated. Alan glanced at Paul Hendricks, who stood frozen. "Do you understand how serious this is?" Paul swallowed hard, his throat dry. I just followed procedure." "No," Alan replied quietly, his tone sharp as steel. "You followed prejudice." Brittany stood beside them, pale as paper. Her phone screen on the service cart had gone dark, but the damage from those few foolish minutes of live streaming was already spreading. Other passengers' videos had started circulating online. The hashtag AeroVista discrimination was beginning to rise. In seat 1, C. David Boston scrolled through an avalanche of comments, his face stripped of the smug amusement he'd had earlier, now replaced by dread and remorse. "I think I just filmed something that could bring down an entire airline," he muttered to himself, unaware that his phone's microphone was still on and thousands were hearing him. Maya remained seated, eyes on the window. No anger now, only a deep sorrow. In that gaze lay a lifetime of lessons, how prejudice never needed a reason to exist. Officer Luis Alvarez stepped closer, his voice sincere. "Dr. Robinson, on behalf of the security team, I'm sorry for not verifying sooner." She turned to him and nodded. "You don't need to apologize for doing your duty. The fault isn't yours, it's in the system that teaches people to believe power comes in only one color." Alan heard it and felt something tighten in his chest. Behind him, Paul asked quietly, "Captain, what should I do?" "Be silent and listen," Alan said, then addressed the cabin, his voice firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. The situation is being handled." His calm authority silenced the room, but curiosity didn't fade. More phones lifted, more cameras recorded. In the age of social media, 10 minutes was all it took for a story to circle the globe. Alan knew the countdown had already begun. Maya unlocked her phone, typing a few lines. She didn't need to call her assistant. Her legal department had been monitoring the situation since the first live stream began. A composed voice came through her earpiece. "We're watching it now, Dr. Robinson. The video has been archived and forwarded to crisis communications." "Thank you," she said softly. "Keep monitoring. I'll handle the rest." In row 3, B. Maria Santos looked up, catching Maya's eyes warm and cold, at once holding both storm and sunrise. Overcome by instinct, Maria lifted her phone and began recording not for views, but as a witness. She knew she was watching a moment that could rewrite how the world saw women of color. Nearby, Paul whispered to Brittany, "Turn your phone off before this gets worse." "I can't," Brittany said, trembling. "If I delete the video, they'll think I'm hiding evidence." "You don't get it," Paul hissed. "That video is the evidence against you." Brittany stared at him, eyes wide with panic. "You think they'll fire me?" "No," Paul said coldly. "I think they'll do far more than that." Alan turned back to Maya and took a deep breath. "Dr. Robinson, may I contact our regional director to report the situation? Do you consent?" Maya nodded. "Do what you believe is right. Just remember what's right isn't always what's convenient." The words stopped him for a beat. Simple yet, they pierced straight through the conscience of a man who had followed procedure for so long that he'd forgotten justice had its own rhythm. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Karen Whitfield, Regional Director. "What's going on, Alan?" came the voice on the line. Alan tried to keep his tone steady. "We have a serious discrimination incident on Flight AV 1281. It involves Dr. Maya Robinson, CEO of Robinson Aerolease." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds, long enough to feel eternal. Then Karen's voice sharpened. "What did you just say? She's on our aircraft." "Yes." "And our crew publicly humiliated her." Karen inhaled sharply. "Secure the scene. I'm contacting headquarters. No one leaves that plane." By the time Alan hung up, sweat had soaked the back of his collar. He turned to Maya, his voice sincere. "They're taking immediate action. On behalf of the airline, I apologize." "There's no need," Maya said, her eyes distant. "I don't need anyone to bow. I just need this system to learn how to stand properly." The line hit Alan hard. There was something in the way she spoke that made him feel small, not because of her power, but because of her grace and intellect. Brittany stood in the aisle, tears brimming. "I didn't mean to. I just thought." Maya looked up, her tone soft, but cutting as a blade. "You didn't need to think. You only needed to see. But you didn't see me. You saw your prejudice." The words fell like cold steel. Brittany's lips trembled, then she lowered her phone. The black screen reflected her face, pale, terrified, full of regret. Maria saw it and knew she would never forget this moment. In row 4, C, the black man who had spoken earlier, bowed his head and whispered, "God, someone finally made them see." Maya turned back to her seat, buckled her belt, and slipped the business card back into its case. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and no one could tell if she was speaking to herself or to the world. Sometimes, to change the world, you have to start with a single seat. Outside the window, the Texas sky glowed gold. The plane remained still, but inside, something had begun to move toward truth, toward accountability, toward a storm of media reckoning that nothing could stop. Within 10 minutes, the hashtag Aerovista discrimination would climb into the top 5 in the United States. Within 1 hour, it would dominate every aviation headline, and within days, it would become the case study the entire service industry would be forced to learn from. And for now, only one woman remained still. Dr. Maya Robinson, eyes closed, face turned toward the sunset sky, as if listening to the quiet sound of justice awakening. The engines hummed softly, but the air in the first-class cabin felt thick, heavy, like a storm gathering its strength before it broke. Captain Alan Mercer had just stepped out of the cockpit phone still in his hand. He scanned the cabin faces filled with curiosity, fear, regret, and one woman sitting perfectly still, unmoving like a statue, Dr. Maya Robinson. "Dr. Robinson," he said, his voice roughened by tension. "Headquarters has been informed. Regional Director Karen Whitfield would like to speak with you directly on a secure line." Maya gave a slight nod. "Put her through." Alan pressed a button and placed the phone on the small tray in front of her. On the other end, Karen's voice came through urgent yet restrained. "Dr. Robinson, this is Karen Whitfield, Regional Director overseeing Southern Operations. I want to offer my deepest apologies." "You don't need to apologize," Maya replied, her tone calm and steady. "Just tell me, how is your system handling the truth that's already spreading out there?" Karen took a breath. "We're managing the information flow. Legal PR and crisis communication teams are already responding. But the videos are out and dozens of accounts are resharing them." Maya ran a fingertip over the business card in front of her. "Good. That's evidence. I don't need them silenced. I need them to listen." Every passenger in the cabin was watching now. No one laughed. No one filmed. There was only silence and awe. Karen's voice softened. "Dr. Robinson, we'll suspend the staff involved, open an internal investigation, and issue a formal apology within 24 hours. Maya shook her head. "Not enough. The problem isn't one employee. It's a culture where discrimination hides behind the word procedure. If I hadn't been in seat 2A today, how many others would have been humiliated? Instead, Alan stood quietly, each of her words landing like a blow to his chest. He had witnessed many so-called customer conflicts, but never had anyone spoken with such clarity and composure. Karen's voice grew smaller, like someone realizing a truth she could no longer deny. "What do you want us to do?" "It's not about what I want," Maya said evenly. "It's about what your system needs to learn." She pressed the speaker button off and turned to Alan. "Captain, I'd like to address the passengers and crew before we take off. I think they need to hear this." Alan nodded. "The floor is yours." She stood. For a moment, the entire cabin seemed to stop breathing. The woman in the grey suit walked down the aisle with quiet poise, as if stepping onto the stage of justice. No microphone, no spotlight, only her voice, low, resonant, and real. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her eyes meeting every gaze. "I apologize for the delay caused by my presence. But the truth is, I didn't create this disruption. I simply refused to let others define my worth." A wave of silence rippled through the cabin. In seat 1, C. David Boston lowered his phone. In 3, B. Maria's hands trembled as she turned on her recorder. This moment, Maya continued, might be just a few minutes on one flight, but for many people it represents a lifetime. People who spend every day proving they are good enough, clean enough, worthy enough to be respected. Her eyes found Brittany, who now sat with her head bowed eyes, red with tears. "I don't hate you," Maya said softly. "I only regret that the system made you believe contempt was power." Brittany broke down. "I was wrong. I didn't realize." Maya shook her head gently. "Realization always comes late, but at least it comes." Maria swallowed hard, tears pooling in her eyes. In that instant, she understood this was no longer a story about right or wrong. It was a lesson in dignity. Alan took a deep breath. He had never heard first class so silent. Even breathing felt cautious, afraid to disturb the sacred stillness that filled the air. Maya's voice carried on, slow and deliberate. "This airplane is more than a machine that flies. It's a symbol of trust, that everyone on board has equal value on the same journey. If an airline cannot protect that respect, then no contract can protect its reputation. Alan lowered his head slightly. Dr. Robinson, you've just said what many in my profession have long forgotten. That's all right, Maya said gently. What matters is that we remember. Outside the window, the sunlight had turned golden, casting a soft glow over the cabin like forgiveness. Alan's phone rang again. He listened briefly, then turned to Maya. The company's CEO, Mr. Winston, would like to speak with you directly. Maya smiled faintly. Tell him to wait 5 minutes. I'm not done yet. She returned to her seat, scanning the cabin one last time. I want you all to remember this. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking change. Because revenge may ease the heart, but only change can make the world better. Her words seemed to crack something open in every heart present. In seat 1, D. Margaret bowed her head, tears spilling freely. I said terrible things about you, she whispered. I'm sorry. Maya gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Thank you. That apology is worth more than any first-class ticket. The cabin erupted into applause, spontaneous, unprompted, an instinctive reaction to grace. Alan handed the phone to Maya. Mr. Winston is waiting. She took it calmly. Hello, Winston. I assume you've seen the video? Yes, his voice was tight. We're taking immediate action. Brittany Cole is terminated. Paul Hendricks is suspended. I'll fly to Atlanta to meet you personally. That won't be necessary, Maya replied. I don't need promises. I need policy. I'm sending Robinson Aerolease's contract terms to your legal department right now. Have them read Section 47, the anti-discrimination clause. Silence. Then a long exhale. Understood. We'll comply. Maya closed the phone and looked out at the blazing sunset sky. The light reflected across her face, illuminating the cabin in gold. She spoke softly, almost a whisper. Justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs to stand firm. Alan signaled the crew to prepare for departure. As the engines began to hum again, Maya tilted her head and smiled faintly. She hadn't won through power, but through dignity. And from this sky, a quiet revolution had just begun from Seat 2A on Flight AV 1281, among hundreds of people who had just witnessed their first lesson in human dignity. The engines rumbled softly, preparing to restart the takeoff sequence. But before the first-class cabin could regain its rhythm, Captain Alan Mercer's phone rang again, a priority tone, urgent voice. Captain, stop the entire startup process. The CEO of the parent company is joining the line. Alan drew a steady breath and turned toward the woman in Seat 2A. Dr. Robinson, I think you'll want to hear this. The head of North Star Aviation Group wants to speak with you directly. She nodded slightly. No surprise, no confusion, only the calm of someone who had expected this moment all along. Alan placed the call on speaker. A deep, weary male voice came through. This is Richard Morrison, Chief Executive Officer of North Star Aviation Group. Dr. Robinson, on behalf of our entire organization, I offer my deepest apologies. We are in an emergency meeting right now. The cabin fell silent. Only the faint hum of the air system moved between heartbeats. Maya leaned back, her tone serene, but cutting through the heavy air like a blade. Mr. Morrison, I don't need an apology. I need you to understand the consequences. In 20 minutes, the hashtag #AeroVistaDiscrimination has spread across social media. Your stock is already down 1.8%. I've just been informed that the Washington Post and CNBC are requesting comment. Alan glanced at her. He had never seen anyone speak of a media storm with the composure one might use to describe the weather. "Good Lord," Morrison murmured. "I know. Our PR team is managing it. We'll terminate those involved, hold a press conference, and compensate you for the damage." "No," Maya replied, her voice calm but firm. "You don't need to compensate me. You need to compensate the system you've allowed to run blind." Her words silenced not only Morrison, but everyone in the cabin. "Do you know what percentage of Aerovista's fleet is leased from Robinson?" Aerolease Maya continued. 34.2%. If I withdraw those contracts, 67 of your planes won't take off. Do you think this is just a financial issue? No, Mr. Morrison. This is a matter of dignity. Her voice didn't rise, but every word carried the weight of iron. In seat 1, C. David Boston swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He turned to the passenger beside him and whispered, "She's not just winning. She's redefining what it means to win." Officer Luis Alvarez watched her with quiet awe. He had met many powerful people, but none who made him feel both fear and faith at once. Over the speaker, Morrison spoke again, his voice hoarse. "Dr. Robinson, what do you want from us?" "I want the system to change," she said. "Starting now, I want mandatory bias awareness training for every employee. I want transparent verification procedures for passengers. I want a direct reporting line for discriminatory behavior. And I want all of that written into the leasing contract as binding terms." Morrison was silent for a few seconds, then exhaled slowly. "It seems you've just rewritten the rules of aviation." "No," Maya said softly. "I'm only reminding you of something humanity once knew. Respect is not a service, it's a duty." A few passengers bowed their heads. Margaret Thompson quietly wiped away tears. Maria, the young Latina woman, stared at Maya as though she were witnessing history being rewritten before her eyes. Dr. Robinson Morrison said at last, "We agree to everything. I'll have the commitment drafted and sent within 2 hours. You can confirm it with your legal team." "Thank you," Maya said. "But remember, what I want isn't just paperwork. I want action." Alan ended the call, then said softly, "I've never seen anyone make an entire corporation tremble." "Not tremble," Maya replied with a faint smile. "Awaken." She turned to Brittany Cole, who sat at the far end of the cabin, head bowed, tears streaming down her face. "Ms. Cole," Maya said slowly, "I want to hear you speak. Not to apologize to me, but to understand yourself." Brittany trembled. I was wrong. I didn't see you. I only saw your skin color. I thought I was defending order, but I was really protecting my own arrogance." "Then you've learned the most expensive lesson in the service industry," Maya said, "that customers don't need to bow to you. They only need you to see them as human." Maria stood up, her voice shaking. "Dr. Robinson, thank you. Today I saw something I've never seen before, that justice can arrive without shouting." Maya looked at her warmly. "And you'll be the one to carry that forward, because I won't be on every flight." Alan stepped forward, picked up the microphone, and spoke through the cabin system. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire crew, I want to offer our deepest apologies and gratitude to Dr. Robinson. Thanks to her, we have a chance to begin again, not just as an airline, but in how we see one another." The cabin erupted in applause. But this time, it wasn't polite or forced. It was the sound of awakening. Brittany continued to cry. Paul Hendricks sat slumped in his seat, face buried in his hands. Luis quietly removed his security badge and placed it on Maya's table. "You reminded me why I chose this job," he said. "Not to command, but to protect." Maya touched the badge lightly. Keep it, officer. The world still needs people like you. Just remember next time, protect the right ones. Alan gave the signal to the crew. Prepare for takeoff. His voice echoed through the speakers, steady and dignified. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Mercer. Following our recent situation, all verifications are complete. Flight AV 1281 to Atlanta will now depart. Thank you for your patience. The engines roared to life again. But inside everyone's hearts, it wasn't the aircraft that truly moved. It was awareness itself now awakened. As the plane rolled down the runway, Maya looked out the window at the red-tinted sky. In the glow of the sunset, she saw her own reflection, not as a CEO, not as a shareholder, but as a human being who had just won an invisible battle, the battle against the smallness of judgment. Maria bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you for making this world a little kinder." Maya smiled softly, her reply barely louder than a breath. "No, my dear. I only made them see themselves." The plane lifted from the ground. The sky opened wide, vast, blue and free, and in the first-class cabin, everyone knew they had just witnessed a verdict delivered from the heavens where justice needed no courtroom, only one person brave enough to stand and to hold on to their dignity to the very end. 2 hours later, when Flight AV 1281 landed in Atlanta, the air in the first-class cabin still hadn't returned to normal. There was no noise, no prejudice, only glances awkward, grateful, and full of respect. The door opened, and the afternoon sunlight streamed in, glinting off the leather seats and reflecting softly on Dr. Maya Robinson's face. She stood unfastened her seatbelt, picked up the Hermes bag Brittany had once called fake, and adjusted her collar. Before stepping out, Maya turned back. The cabin fell completely silent, as if awaiting judgment. But she simply said, "Don't let this flight be remembered as an incident. Let it be a beginning." She walked away, slow, deliberate, and unshaken. Behind her, Captain Alan Mercer stood at attention, bowing slightly as an act of honor. "Ma'am, thank you for giving me a lesson that 30 years in this industry never taught." Maya smiled softly. "Thank you for listening, Alan." As she stepped into the jet bridge, hundreds of phones turned toward her. Reporters, passengers, airport staff. The story had escaped control. A female journalist rushed forward. "Dr. Robinson, do you have a statement regarding what happened on Flight AV 1281? Maya paused, looked directly into the camera lens, and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Don't call it an incident. Call it a turning point. Because sometimes it takes one touch of truth to awaken an entire system." The words spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, the video of her moment reached 12 million views. The hashtag #DignityInFlight flooded social media, accompanied by one line. "The woman they humiliated on a flight, turns out she owned the plane." The media called it the wake-up slap of American aviation. The next morning, the 42nd floor conference room at Robinson Aerolease glowed with morning light. On the giant screen, flashing headlines, CNN, CNBC, the New York Times, Forbes. Marcus Shaw Meyer's legal advisor spoke in a measured tone. "Public reaction is completely in our favor. They see you as a symbol of justice. Aerovista is in crisis. Their stock fell another 3%, and their CEO has been summoned by the board." Maya sat at the head of the table, listening quietly. She wore a plain white shirt, no jewelry, no trace of triumph. "We won't make them enemies," she said. "They need the chance to make it right." Marcus nodded slowly. "Understood." But you should know other airlines are approaching you. Global Jet, Atlantic Air, even United Sky want to sign new leasing deals. No, Maya replied, eyes drifting toward the skyline beyond the glass. I'll keep Aero Vista. Change only matters when it happens from within. The room fell silent. Everyone understood she wasn't just a business leader. She was redefining power itself, not as the ability to make others pay, but to make them want to be better. That afternoon, Aero Vista held a press conference. CEO Charles Winston appeared tense, standing before a white backdrop reading, "Accountability, dignity, change." He bowed deeply before the cameras. On behalf of Aero Vista Airlines, I take full responsibility for what happened on Flight AV 1281. Dr. Maya Robinson is not just a business partner. She is a mirror of the dignity we forgot. Starting today, Aero Vista launches the Zero Bias Initiative, mandatory training, transparent feedback systems, and a 24/7 hotline for passengers who experience discrimination. The press conference lasted 17 minutes, but its impact rippled across the globe. Aero Vista's stock stopped falling. International human rights groups sent letters of praise. CNN commented, "An airline lost its reputation, but found its humanity." That night, Maya returned to her penthouse in downtown Atlanta. The room was bathed in gold light, overlooking a city glittering like a river of stars. On the table, her phone buzzed non-stop emails, messages, interview requests, and thank-you notes from strangers around the world. One stood out from Luis Alvarez, the security officer from that day. "Dr. Robinson, I've just been promoted. They've put me in charge of passenger relations training. Thank you for believing that someone like me could change things." Maya read it and smiled gently. She didn't reply immediately, just looked out at the city, its glass towers reflecting the same kind of light she'd seen through the window of Seat 2A. On the shelf nearby was an old framed photo, her with her mother and sister, standing outside their small home in Memphis. She remembered what her mother once told her. "You can fly as high as you want, as long as you remember to look down to where you took off." Maya whispered softly, "I still look, Mom, and I see the whole sky learning to fly again on the wings of respect." The next morning, the news spread everywhere. 3 major airlines announced they would adopt the Robinson Protocol, a framework based on Maya's proposals. The Federal Aviation Administration confirmed it was reviewing the program as a potential industry standard. Maria Santos, the young Latina woman from Seat 3B, posted on LinkedIn, "I used to stay silent when I saw others being mistreated. But after Flight AV 1281, I realized silence is also a form of complicity. Dr. Robinson didn't just make the world see her, she made us see ourselves." Her post reached 2 million shares. Brittany Cole, the former flight attendant from Aero Vista, also appeared on a talk show. She didn't hide. "I was wrong. But Dr. Robinson didn't destroy me. She made me face myself. Now I'm studying for a certification in equality in customer service." She was right. Realization comes late, but it's never too late. Late that night, Maya sat by her window with a glass of red wine. The city lights shimmered across the glass like constellations. Her phone rang. It was Alan Mercer. "Dr. Robinson, I wanted to let you know, Flight AV 1281 has just been named Flight of Change at the Aviation Excellence Awards. They say it's the flight that changed the entire industry." Maya chuckled softly. "I only sat in my rightful seat, Alan." "True," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "But sometimes it takes one person sitting in the right seat to show the world how long it's been sitting in the wrong one." Silence filled both ends of the line. Outside, the city still glowed, but inside Maya's heart, peace had returned. She set down her glass, opened her laptop, and typed the first line of a new project, Dignity in Transit Foundation. Mission to turn respect into policy, not just a temporary act of kindness. It was a small light, but she knew that if it burned long enough, it could illuminate the entire sky. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive through verdicts, it arrives through one person who dares to stay seated until the world is forced to stand up for them. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful flight, and America still hadn't stopped talking about Dr. Maya Robinson. Her story was no longer a trending headline, it had become a cultural symbol. On the morning news, the anchor opened the segment, "From an act of discrimination, Dr. Maya Robinson has transformed an entire industry." But what people truly admire isn't the power she holds. It's the way she uses it. In business schools, students were studying the Robinson effect, the first case study on leadership that turned conflict into reform. On social media, the hashtag dignity in transit still appeared daily, but it was no longer a cry of outrage. It had become a stream of small, hopeful stories, a passenger helping another, an employee apologizing on time, a smile being recognized as a gesture of civility. The world, it seemed, had begun to soften. That afternoon, the Hilton Chicago Convention Center glowed under bright lights. Representatives from more than 20 nations attended, with hundreds of journalists packed into the room. A large banner on stage read, "Global Forum on Ethics in Service Industries." Dr. Maya Robinson was the keynote speaker. As she walked onto the stage, the entire hall rose to its feet. It wasn't a roar, it was a standing ovation that rolled like a wave. She wore a white suit, her hair softly down, a small silver pin on her chest, engraved with the words, "Dignity First." She carried no slides, no printed speech, only a folded piece of paper. Her voice, warm and calm, opened the way sunlight breaks after a storm. "I am not a hero," she began. "I am just a passenger." But perhaps in the moments when we are brought low, we discover the true height of humanity. The hall fell silent. Cameras panned across faces, politicians, journalists, executives, students, all listening motionless. Maya spoke about that flight not to relive the humiliation, but to highlight the awakening. "I saw a captain brave enough to admit his mistake, a passenger brave enough to stand, and a flight attendant brave enough to cry and say, 'I was wrong.' Justice is not about punishment. It is the moment when people find the courage to look at themselves." Her tone slowed, gentle as water, steady as stone. We don't need more powerful people. We need more people who know how to use power to lift others up, because no one loses anything by giving respect. The stage lights shimmered across her face, making her words seem to glow. The hall stood again, applause thundering, some wiping tears. In a quiet corner of the room, Brittany Cole, now a student in the Diversity in Aviation program, watched from a side screen. She wore a simple blouse hair tied neatly, holding a notebook filled with scribbles. When Maya said, "No one loses anything by giving respect," Brittany bowed her head, and her tears fell on the page. Beside her, Maria Santos, now CEO of Avi Diverse, a consultancy for inclusion, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're in the right place. Learning from mistakes doesn't make us weaker. It makes us more trustworthy." Brittany nodded, smiling faintly. "I don't know how I can make up for it." "Start by being different," Maria said softly. "Sometimes changing the world begins with one sincere apology." On stage, Maya continued. "When Aerovista renewed our contract, they asked me, "Would you like to add a new clause?" I said yes. I added one simple line: "Respect is mandatory, not optional." That line spread across the internet within hours, becoming the slogan of dozens of global service companies. Forbes called it the Robinson Clause, the most human contract term in business history. Later that evening, when the event ended, Maya walked off the stage into a long hallway glowing with light. Waiting there was Alan Mercer. He was no longer in his pilot's uniform, but in a suit, his face bright yet humble. "Dr. Robinson," he said, "you didn't just save my career. You helped me rediscover its meaning." "You deserve that," Maya replied. "You made the right choice, listening instead of commanding." Alan smiled. "They just named the new training program after you, the Robinson Standard." "No, Maya," said, her eyes warm. "Call it the human standard, because it doesn't belong to me." The Chicago night was cool. Maya stepped out onto the hotel balcony wind, lifting her hair gently. Below her, the city shimmered like an ocean of stars. She pulled out her phone and opened an unread message from Luis Alvarez. "Dr. Robinson, the Zero Bias Program has been implemented nationwide. I wanted to send you this photo." A picture appeared: hundreds of airport security officers standing in formation, hands over their hearts, beneath a banner reading, "Respect takes off here." Maya stared at it for a long moment. A small smile formed, gentle quiet, yet carrying a wave of emotion beneath it. She whispered, "Now that's the real flight." 2 days later, the World Ethics Council announced the Applied Peace Award to Dr. Maya Robinson for bringing humanity into the machinery of systems. When asked for comment, Maya simply said, "I didn't win against anyone. I only convinced the world that respect is worth more than power." Millions shared her words. Amid all the noise of the online world, her message spread like a whisper across the planet, small but unshakable. That night, Maya wrote in her journal, October 21st, Chicago draped in silver fog. I stood on a stage and witnessed something rare when people stop fearing they begin to listen. I don't want to be remembered as a CEO, but as someone who made the world listen a little more. She closed the notebook and turned off the light. Outside, the night sky reflected the glow of countless windows. People's stories lives, transforming because of one moment of compassion. Sometimes it only takes one person holding on to their dignity in the middle of a storm for that light to be enough to help the whole world find its way back to itself. 6 months after the incident, the world had changed. There were no headlines, no slogans, only quiet transformations, steady and lasting. At Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, a young black woman dropped her wallet at the check-in counter. The attendant, a young woman with kind eyes, bent down to pick it up and smiled. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Let me help you check all your luggage." There was no suspicious glance, no trace of condescension. On her small name tag was a new inscription, "Trained under the Robinson Protocol." In New York, a business class was playing a video of Maya Robinson as an introduction to a course called Ethical Leadership. The professor told his students, "She didn't just change aviation. She taught us that justice isn't the sound of an explosion, it's the echo of respect." At Aerovista's headquarters, a framed photo of Maya sitting in seat 2A now hung in the main lobby beneath silver letters that read, "Dignity is every person's first-class seat." As for Maya, she had quietly stepped away from the spotlight. After the awards, the interviews, and the nominations, she chose a simpler life, working, writing, and running the Dignity in Transit Foundation, a legal aid fund for people facing discrimination in service industries. The Foundation's office was small, but the phone never stopped ringing. Every call and every letter began with a familiar line. "I know your story, and it gave me the courage to speak up." She read each one carefully, never seeing herself as a symbol, only as someone who once sat still, so the world could learn to stand. One morning, Maya received an email from Brittany Cole, the flight attendant from that day. The subject read, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Brittany wrote, "I've just completed my certification in human rights in the service industry. I've been rehired by Aerovista this time in the training department. On my first day teaching, I told my students about a flight, a woman and a lesson not found in any textbook that when you make a mistake, don't fear punishment. Fear not changing." Maya finished reading and smiled softly. She didn't reply immediately. She simply saved the email in a folder titled, "Keep Forever." That evening she stepped out onto her balcony, overlooking the glowing lights of Atlanta. The wind carried the scent of freshly cut grass, warm and alive. In the night sky above, a plane passed by, leaving a long white trail, thin, beautiful like a promise. Maya whispered almost to herself, "That day I only wanted to keep my seat. I never imagined it would help the whole world find its own." And then she smiled, not the smile of victory, but the smile of someone who understood that true strength isn't about flying higher than others, but about helping everyone rise together in dignity. 1 year later, the American aviation industry entered a new era. Airlines across the country had implemented the Robinson Protocol, and the phrase zero bias training had become a mandatory part of every hiring process. At every airport, small plaques were placed near the departure gates, each engraved with the same message, "Respect takes off here." Dr. Maya Robinson made a rare public appearance at the first anniversary celebration of the program. No longer the powerful CEO, she wore the same grey blazer she had worn the day she sat in seat 2A. As she stepped up to the podium, the audience rose to their feet, but she lifted her hand, signaling them to stop. "Please," she said softly, "don't stand for me. Stand for those who were once forced to sit down." Her voice was calm, yet it silenced the entire hall. We've learned that justice doesn't need to shout. It needs small actions, repeated every day, a respectful glance, a timely apology, a decision brave enough to correct a mistake. Because sometimes it's the smallest things that help the world grow. In the front row, Maria Santos and Luis Alvarez smiled and held hands. They were now co-founders of Empathy in Aviation, a training center educating thousands of airline employees each year. Beside them, Brittany Cole quietly wiped away tears. She had once fallen, but it was in that same place that she was lifted up again. The ceremony ended in a long, heartfelt applause. Maya left the hall and walked alone toward the old airport, where the aircraft AV-1281 was now displayed in the Aviation Museum as a symbol of change. Seat 2A had been preserved enclosed in glass, with a small plaque beneath it that read, "Here sat dignity." It never left. She stood there for a long time, her hand resting gently on the glass eyes closed. Memories flooded back the slap of a boarding pass, the looks of disdain, and that moment when she decided she would not leave her seat. Behind her, a young black boy, no more than 10 years old, stopped and tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mum, who's the lady in the picture?" he asked. The mother bent down and whispered, "She's the woman who taught the whole world how to be kind, son." Maya turned and smiled at them. "Hello there," she said. "Have you ever flown before?" "Yes," the boy answered, "but I get scared." "Don't be," Maya said, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Just remember, it doesn't matter what seat you're in. What matters is knowing you belong there. That afternoon, Maya boarded another flight, not to challenge anyone this time, but to return home to Memphis. She looked out the window as the golden sunset painted the sky. High above, the clouds glowed in shades of orange and crimson, like a quiet fire burning the fire of belief that the world could still be better if someone was brave enough to sit still in the right place and never bow before injustice. The plane trembled slightly, then soared upward. Behind it, the light dissolved into the clouds, closing a chapter of history. But in seat 2A, in the hearts of millions, Dr. Maya Robinson was still flying. Not on metal wings, but on the dignity that had changed the world forever. From the perspective of an expert in leadership ethics and corporate culture, the journey of Dr. Maya Robinson is not merely the story of a first-class seat. It is a declaration for an entire generation. A reminder that true power does not lie in forcing others to bow, but in inspiring them to look within themselves. She did not demand justice through anger. She drew it forth through calm wisdom and compassion. In a world where prejudice still boards every flight, Maya taught us that dignity needs no permission. It only needs to be upheld. If you believe that respect has the power to change an entire system like this video, to share that message and subscribe to the channel to continue hearing stories where humanity is tested by power. Before you leave, comment below with the phrase that reflects your belief in that value: hold your dignity.